Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to another episode of Musically Mindful. My name is Mike Renzetti, and I'm thrilled to welcome on my guest this week for a number of reasons. You might know him as the founder of Live for Live Music, curator of events such as Denver and Brooklyn Comes Alive, Days Between, but you might not know that he's also a meditation teacher via One Giant Mind. He's also a family man and a fellow human. So please help me welcome to the show, kunj Shah.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I am really excited. We chatted a little bit beforehand to pick your brain, both in terms of mental health within music, hear a little bit about your journey too, and also just kind of see, from a different perspective, what music means to you and kind of just pick your brain on the whole subject and see how it unfolds.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'm happy to talk. Happy to
Great.
be.
Yeah, I have a feeling it's going to be a good one. So we'll dive right in. And when I say mental health, what exactly does that mean to you?
I think it has to do with your, you know, state of consciousness in daily life. I think a lot of people, are struggling with the state of consciousness that they're in, and they're having trouble living in the present moment and dealing with things. And I think a lot of people get distressed and overwhelmed because they feel like they're not capable of handling the demands that are put forth in front of them. And so that causes them to go into fight or flight mode. And I think that creating a life where you feel capable and worthy of handling the things that come up in it and the things that you need to do and the tasks that you need to take care of and feeling good about that, I think that kind of is where mental health comes in.
I think that's a really great, not only a broad look, but in particular in the part you kind of touched on where we talk about the things that get put on us as well. Because at the end of the day, mental health, it means numerous things to different people. It's the external as well as the internal, it's all kind of a melting pot of all the different things that we deal with.
Yeah, I mean, my mental health is also tied into my physical health. Like
Abs-
I think I think there's this idea that this mind-body connection thing that people, kind of made a thing in like the 70s and 80s. But the mind and the body are one thing. Your your mind affects your body and your body affects your mind. They're not two separate things that we treat them so separately. Our mental health, our physical health, it's just all health when it comes down to it.
Absolutely. And, there's the old adage, health is wealth. And the beauty within that, they say, the words you speak are the house that you live in, but also the house that you live in affects your ability to speak, how you react to people. I even talk about it in the topic of food. What and how you eat affects everything that you do. It affects your mood, it affects your sleep, and it really is all under one main umbrella. It's just health.
Yeah,
And
I mean, I think the most important thing in life is how you are within yourself. And I think that actually is what I would say constitutes mental health is how are you within yourself? Because, you know, I think in life, that's actually the only thing that matters. How you are within is, is basically how you take in the world and how you show up in the world. It's completely dependent on how you are within. So you want to make it a nice, pleasant place to live inside because the rest of it doesn't really matter. It's not going to make an impact if you're not happy within, if you're not, if you don't have a regulated environment that you live in on a daily basis. You can live in a nice house, but if you're emotionally deregulated all the time, it's not going to feel like a nice house. You're going to notice all these little spots and things that need to be fixed because you just can't sit with yourself with it.
right, it's your ability not only to be with yourself, but it's your ability to appreciate yourself as you are, as you were, and without the foresight of what you will be because you don't really know. But appreciating the fact of, where you were, where you are, where you will be are all right.
Hmm.
And I love, talking about, you can live in a nice home. I had a conversation with somebody yesterday that was visiting my place for the first time, and they were like, "Oh, it's so cool in here," whatever. And I took it as a compliment, but it was funny the way that I thought about it in my head was your physical home should be a reflection of you. It should be warm, it should be welcoming, it should be inviting. But then when you take that the step further, that's how you should be within yourself too. The dirty dishes that might be in the sink are the thoughts that you're ruminating on or the things that you have that you're not paying attention to and taking the time to clear out. Because the more clutter that you have internally, the less availability you have to open up space to the things around you.
Absolutely.
And I really love how you talked about, right out of the gate being present. And that's something that I've struggled with a lot in the past that I'm currently really working on. And I actually want to present a quote to you that I found from an interview of yours from a very long time ago. And I think it'll be a really cool segue into kind of the next stuff that I want to get into. So bear with me for a minute. So it says, be present. The best ideas in the industry don't happen when you're sitting in an office, writing on a whiteboard, searching for ways to increase profits. They happen at shows, festivals, concerts, green rooms, and after parties where everyone is getting loose and having a good time. Go to every concert, festival, and event you possibly can because that's where you'll meet the like minded people you need to work with to make things happen. And the reason that I pulled that quote was because after looking into you a little bit, I wanted to not only see how you felt about having said that at one point, but kind of transitioning into what being present means to you now. And really, I think I can just gather by what I've looked at that, yeah, going to every show, going to every concert, doing everything you can, it has its place, it has its time. But I'd love to hear how you feel about presence now and maybe even other ways that you found ability to be present.
That must have been in my 20s. But I think
I think
that,
it was from about 12 years ago, the interview that I read.
wow. So present, I think I used presence in a different way back then. Back then, I think it might have been a question, probably. I'm guessing it was probably a question about like how I started my business and how it propelled forward. And at the time, what really helped me, was making relationships with people in physical spaces across the country. And I was able to come up with different ideas and, really have long, good, deep hangs with people. And that sometimes led to a lot of really cool things, very specifically to the music business because I was in the music business trying to break it in the music business. My life today looks very different. I'm up at 5:30. I am getting sunlight or going into a sunlight lamp. I'm getting on the Peloton bike or strength training or running or doing yoga. Then I find moments of stillness. Then I have a gratitude practice. Then I have family time. And then I end in like sauna. And it's a very different type of being present than it was then. I still believe that then I needed to be in a lot of those rooms and a lot of those places for my business. Um, Today I look at presence as a very different thing. It's like, can I feel okay with being in the present moment? Like, am I happy to just be here? Or am I thinking about the next thing? Or am I thinking about the past? Am I worrying about the next thing or worrying about the past? And I think I did a lot of that when I was younger. When I probably said that quote, I think I was always looking towards the next thing because my current situation didn't feel good enough. It didn't feel okay enough. And sometimes that makes for good ambition, it makes for good growth in business. But that eventually takes too big a toll. And the toll that it takes is not worth it in the long run to me. Um, not to say that it's not worth it. I think the person I was then was is the reason of who I am today. And I do really appreciate a lot of that. And it's something that you could do in your 20s, and you could be there and it worked for me. But then I also was able to figure out what didn't work for me, the partying, the drugs, the alcohol. I'm fully sober now. And I stopped drinking alcohol like 6 years ago or so. And
Congratulations. I'm coming up on 3 years myself.
nice. I mean, do you ever get dreams that you're like that you've been drinking?
Sometimes less drinking, more some other things, but yeah, for sure.
It happened to me a few weeks ago, and then it happened to me again last night. I woke up and I was just like, "Oh my God, I can't believe I did that." And then I was like, "Wait a minute, I didn't do that."
Right, right,
And I was
right.
like, "Oh shit." Yeah, so I made a lot of changes in my life, and I figured out like I want to be okay with being here now and not like, oh my God, I'm so uncomfortable. I'm so dysregulated. I need to go do this next thing because I can't just sit with myself. So there was a little bit of that back then, but there was also like a fun aspect of just really of being immersed in this thing that was so new and exciting that it actually did cause me to be present and feeling present in a lot of those moments. But it
Mhm.
also came with a lot of dysregulation. I'm actually a huge proponent of sleep now. That's something that I wasn't getting then. But again,
None of us were.
yeah, but again, that's something that, is doable in your 20s, but 30s it's not so much. And 40s and 50s you gotta get your 8 hours and where you can. So I'm not going to every show. I'm not going to every festival. Um, Getting me to go to shows and festivals sometimes is like pulling teeth for my wife, because I'm
Sure,
trying to make sure that I'm in bed by a certain time and I've eaten dinner at a certain time. But tonight I'm going out. I'm going to sushi restaurant. I'm vegetarian and um, it's a friend's birthday, and then I'm going to go see Kraftwerk later tonight. So tonight will be one of those rare exceptions, but I don't feel like there's another concert tomorrow night that my wife's going to at Red Rocks, L'Imperatrice.
hmm
Really cool, but I'm not doing 2 nights in a row. She's gonna go. I'm gonna go home. I'll take care of the kids, and I will be up at 5:30 again, and I'm gonna feel so much better the next day
right.
because of it.
And there's so much to unpack within all of that, and it's really the meat and potatoes of why I wanted to talk to you so much because I am in such a similar place. Obviously I don't work in music. I've kind of been very centralized to it. Like we were talking about earlier, I've luckily befriended a lot of guys in the industry. Brownie from the Biscuits. I have a good relationship with the guys in Pigeons playing ping pong. I'm from the same area as Dogs in a Pile, and they're good friends of mine. Jake from Eggy and the rest of those guys, and I've been around the scene for some time, and in my 20s, I'm 30 now, but in my 20s, being in all of those places, the hotel after party and being in the green room when, like a tour manager will be like, "Hey, like there's some people here, like you got to keep it down." And like but being a part of that, you can still find presence in it because it's a thing that's bigger than you.
Mhm.
It's a way it can be a means of escape. It can be a means of seeking something greater. It can also just be a sense of community or, a beautiful construct within particularly improvisational music that I find really any concert, but specifically within that niche is there are people from all walks of life. There's a guy who's succeeding. There's a guy who's having some trouble paying bills. There's somebody who just got out of a relationship. But all of those people, for that small amount of time, are in a room feeling and reciprocating energy back and forth across the guardrail to the person next to you, dancing, there's sweat flying, and it's a beautiful place that you can kind of be in.
And they're getting
And
preconceived notions of how music is supposed to be. So in a way, it's almost meditative. You're accepting each moment, each note as it comes with improvisational music, which makes it so special. It's like you're allowing it to be, you're be whatever it is going to be, which is a really cool part of it.
right, right. And nobody has real control over it. Even the guys on stage, I've had numerous conversations, both on the show and not, about, it's a Zen place for them as well, because they can just kind of unplug. And those guys are having a shared energy and moments where they're really just kind of, music is a universal language.
Mhm.
But when you get into the point of improvisation and you get into like those really deep pockets where, don't get me wrong, there's always going to be chompers, there's people having conversations and what have you. But when the whole room is kind of on a similar wave and everybody feels not necessarily a swell in terms of like a jam, but there's just that moment where there's a collective conscious, a shared moment of peace of mind, of peace of body, soul, all of it. It's really a connection point. And I feel like the further you go along as a music fan, the more you branch out into listening, the more people that you encounter and all of those kinds of things. Because listen, we're both two sober guys now. We've had late nights, we've had shows that we might not remember, conversations that I'm sure that, are a bit fuzzy and what have you. But the deeper you get into it and you really find yourself within it, that was something I struggled with for a long time. I feel like it becomes a sense of identity for a lot of people. But I appreciate so much your point about, bringing it back to the beginning of what you said of being comfortable and present in yourself and
Yeah.
enjoying yourself in your own space. And through sobriety in particular, that was something that took me a while to find, because you get so comfortable, you get so used to being in a particular headspace, or realistically going into it and not having any awareness of your headspace because you're just getting out of your head completely. But I feel like with sobriety, you have to take the time to reintegrate and, learn how to, going to a show without having a drink in your hand,
Mhm.
or going to a show without like what's in your wallet or what's in your pocket. It's an adjustment, but I think that it's really, I've always said that sobriety has given me more than it ever took away.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
and I think in particular context within music, it brought me closer to the music, because not only are you there remembering everything, you're paying attention, but you're there as a raw entity. You're not there clouded or confused, or you're there to experience it and let it affect you the way that it does. So for you personally, as somebody who works in music as well, what do you see the difference in, or is there any, in the way that music affects you as a fan, as a listener, or in your work, kind of as somebody, you have to, I'm sure, at times pay attention or go see an artist, worrying, not worrying, but with intention of booking or something of that nature. How does music affect you in those different microcosms from a mental health perspective?
Like sober or
Just in general, I mean, we can talk about it sober, just how, like, because I'm curious how, mute fish was a thing for you like it was for me, but
and it
I'm,
still is. And I
yeah.
for me, it's just it isn't my identity anymore. It is something that I enjoy, and I allow myself to still enjoy those things, but I don't feel like I need to be the most fucked up for a certain part of a concert to feel the certain thing that I'm extrapolating out of it. It's just it isn't that anymore. I go to the first night and the last night of a run, and I'm happy, and I find that it's still something that I value a lot in my life. But I also find myself streaming a lot more shows because I feel like sometimes I get more out of the music when I do that.
Hmm.
Um, I'm just, I'm in it. I'm zoned in. I don't have people talking in my ear. I'm like able to enjoy it without feeling like I'm working or networking or, doing any one of those things. Nugs has been great for that. They're, a great streaming platform that I feel like I've been streaming a lot more shows and listening to music more at home. And for me, it's still really important, part of my life, and it always will be. It's something that the reason why I have my relationships, my wife, my best friends, so many things were centered around that. But I think I'm just not, it's not escapism for me. It's just another joyful part of life. It's not like this thing that's all consuming. This is my identity. I need to count and track how many shows I've been to, feel like I've achieved a certain status within these, within the industry with my peers. I don't feel as much pressure to be seen in a certain way by people in the industry. And now the pressure that I do feel is, hey, how do I work on seeing myself in the way that I want to see myself? Because I feel like that's where a lot of the pain comes from. A lot of, the drug use came from. And I feel like I was battling a lot of these feelings of unworthiness and needing to be in all of these places. And I was trying to fill a void that I couldn't fill. And now I just feel very comfortable in who I am. So the music actually feels more real in a way. It doesn't, I'm not getting, you know, faced and like taking my shirt off in the middle of a
Yeah.
EA crowd at a fish show. Man, I'm still having a really good time when I go see them. I went to a Disco Biscuit show at the Mission.
I was there.
Oh, nice. And
Yeah.
so I just went to those guys are friends, and I went to the first set. And I was like, I remember Andy Frasco was like up on the balcony and
Hmm.
sent me a video of me like dancing 4 rows back and behind Madman, like, having a really, really good time. And I really was. It was amazing. But I just had a kid. I had so much fun that one set. I went, said hi to the guys afterwards, and I left after set break. I didn't
I
stay for.
left it separate too.
And I was like, I was talking to my friends, and they're like, I was like, that was really awesome. Like, I absolutely love that. I had a really good time. And they're like, looked at me like I was crazy for leaving. I was like, no. They're like, well, like, they're killing it. Like, you're gonna leave? And I was like, they just killed it. I'm good. I'm satisfied. I feel like I got my fix. I know I'll be home by 10. I'll get 7.5 hours of sleep. I'll work out tomorrow. And that for me now feels like a good balanced life, And
I can't. I cannot agree more. Not only in the particular context, because I did verbatim the exact same thing the same night, but it was funny. I took a friend of mine. She had never seen the Biscuits before, and I was like, "Tell you what, let's go." So we went, and I can also preface with I've kind of taken a bit of a step out of music as a viewer a little bit over the past couple of months. I went into a bit of an isolation period where I really wanted to, I had kind of come to terms with the fact that I'm not the person that I used to be.
Mhm.
And also within that, I needed to just unplug from all of the things and kind of reintroduce them to myself. I had found that I got to a point where the experience wasn't exclusively about the music
Mhm.
anymore. It was about, it's funny. I've never worked professionally in music, but I have always felt like I'm networking at every show that I go to. Um, but I wanted, or rather, I needed to understand that the show just needs to be the show. It doesn't need to be riddled with coming in like you're the mayor and saying hello to 1,000 people. It doesn't
Mhm.
need to be staying to the end of the night and saying hello to the band. It doesn't need to be any of those things. So the show needs to just be what it is in the moment. So yeah, I went to the 3 night Billy run at Ball Arena, and I went, no cell phone, nothing, by myself in the pit, and I danced harder than I think I've probably danced in the past 5 years. And when
Nice.
I inevitably ended up getting back to my phone and turning it on, there were pictures of me from around, like friends were sending me stuff. They're like, "I see you." Um, but it was so nice. And then at the Biscuits, I didn't see the Biscuits for about 4 years, from like COVID up until last year when they played here. I'm local. I live in Boulder, and I went to the show. I had fun. She went and danced and did her thing. We met back up at set break, and I was like, I'm content. Like, that was great. You've seen the Biscuits. Let's get out of here. And we
Hmm.
left. Um, but it's that acceptance of what the experience can be to you, what it can be on a particular night. There are the nights that you're going to want to stay the whole time. There are the nights that you're going to want to hang out with all your friends. Just like you were saying, tonight you're going to go out to dinner. It's one of those. And I think it makes you more appreciative of those nights. Like I just went to Winter Wondergrass, and it was the first time in a very long time that I stayed out till like 5 in the morning, and went to the after party and hung out with friends, and we were in a house, and a bunch of us were jamming and entertaining and having fun, and the ability to still do that sober, it makes me appreciate it more because
Are you in Denver?
I live in Boulder.
Oh, nice. Okay,
Yeah,
great.
yeah. So I've just started to find, I mean, the also beautiful part about being in Colorado that I've seen, especially over the year and a half or so that I've lived here now, there is such a conscious wave of people shifting into the sobriety, the building your life, because there's life outside of the scene. There's life outside of music. And that's something I also want to touch on with you. I'd love to really hear a little bit about the health transition that you took and how music stayed in your life, obviously, as your business, as a passion, but where your life began to change out of it. Because to share a little bit of personal insight as well, in 2018, I had a bad back injury that put me on the shelf for about a year. And at that point, I was not sober. I was 320 pounds, very, very unhealthy, had quit cigarettes, but smoked a pack of cigarettes a day for years and all of that. Um, and I got sick and tired of being sick and tired. And when I got back from that injury that I was like able to function again, I was still overweight and unhealthy, and it was time. So I found yoga, and I found intermittent fasting and dieting, and I completely overhauled my whole life. But music was always a constant. It was always something to get back to. It was always something to appreciate in the lows as well as in the highs. Um, and I'd really love to get some insight about, what happened to you with, if I'm pronouncing it right, a vascular necrosis.
Oh yeah, avascular necrosis. Yep.
Yeah, I'd love to hear, because as somebody who's as passionate about music as you are, that it became your business, I'd also just love to hear how now your path to healing and other things, how music kind of was intertwined with that as well.
So 6 years ago, or 6 or 7 years ago, I was diagnosed with a disease called avascular necrosis. I was having a ton of hip pain for years, and I'd see different chiropractors, and they'd be like, "Oh, it's because of this or it's because of that." And eventually, I showed an orthopedic surgeon who like took one look at it and was like, "Oh no, this is a serious issue here. I'm gonna look." And when they gave me the diagnosis that I had avascular necrosis in my left hip, showing a little bit in my right hip, I was like, oh shit, my life is over. I'm never gonna, you know, recover from this. I really fucked it all up. I was engaged at the time. I was getting married in like a year. I was freaked out. I was really anxious. I was really angry. I was really depressed. I couldn't come to terms with what I had. And so over the next few months, I eventually decided to take control of my life. I think I was at like there's these furniture stores called like ABC Furniture or something like that in New York City. They're like these massive things. They actually have insane restaurants in them as well, like ABC Cocina and ABCV, and they're really, really it's a really crazy place. But like Deepak Chopra was doing like a talk in one of them, and I went to that, and I felt like that started to stir up some interest in that realm, and I started to do yoga. I started walking. I started eating healthier, and most importantly, I got sober. I stopped drinking. Right, I played around with sobriety. I was sober curious for a little bit, and then I
Sober curious. I love that.
yeah, I got a little bit more and more sober
Yeah.
throughout, and I lost a ton of weight, and I just really kind of revamped my life at that point. And moved out to Colorado. And luckily, I moved out here with a healthier mindset and intention than I was living with in New York, because there's a whole world out here in Colorado that is so active and wellness based that it sometimes but it also works. It's like simultaneously that people are going out and partying till 5 in the morning, but then there's a whole world of people who are up at 5 in the morning here, and they're out running or getting in their car packed up to go skiing. And so it's really funny to see the two different cultures in the Venn diagram of where they overlap here as well.
Yeah,
But
it's like an ultimate duality of lifestyle and culture, but like the same guy that was next to you at 4:30 in the morning, you'll see on the bike trail on
yeah,
thir yeah, it's beautiful too.
and so I took a meditation course, a 3-day meditation course, and I did it through Backline actually at the time, and it changed my life. I feel like it made me more aware of what changes I needed to actually make those changes, and then actually be able to sustain those changes. So I realized that, sobriety was something that I needed in my life. I realized that I needed to focus on my health and wellness and fitness. And even though their doctors would be like, oh, well, you probably shouldn't even be weight bearing, or I did my own research and really dove into what I thought I could be doing for this quote unquote incurable disease. And I kind of took the opposite route. I got as active as I could. Um, I practiced meditation. I started weight training. I started doing cardio. I started doing, I was sober, started eating healthier, sleeping better. And that completely revamped and changed my life. And meditation's kind of the thing that allows me to know intuitively what changes that I need to make in my life. And it just puts you in touch with and the awareness, you're more aware of what you need in life, and you kind of listen to your body and your intuition about what changes you need to make. And so meditation has been really the key for me to sustain all the other changes that I've had. Um, but yeah, I completely changed my entire way of being and living um, after this diagnosis. And honestly, it ended up being the best thing that ever happened to me. It was, it still is not something that I've cured. It's in my shoulders, my hips, my knees, but I'm like, I'm benching 1.5 times my body weight. I'm squatting 200 pounds. I weigh 130. I'm doing things that I never was able to do when I was quote unquote healthy. But
Hmm.
actually, at that time, I was very unhealthy. So for me, this disease ended up being one of the best things that ever happened to me. And through that time, I still did what I I still had my business, still put on shows, concerts, and events. But I started to understand and realize that I didn't need to be everywhere that, the guy in the quote from earlier in the podcast
Right, right.
that he needed to be, especially once my business is already it's taken off. I have all these relationships. Nobody cares whether I'm hanging out with them at 4 in the morning or whether they see me at sound check instead. And I've slowly learned that, and I'm still learning that. I'm going to Jazz Fest in a few weeks, and I have got 25 shows. Some of them don't even start till 2 in the morning.
Yeah, Jazz Fest is a whole another animal marathon. It's
Yeah.
not, yeah.
So this time I'm gonna have both kids. I'm gonna have my mother-in-law there, grandma will be there, and so I will do it different. I'll go to sound checks. I'll go to early, I'll come in and say hi. I don't feel like I need to stay for every show. There's certain ones that I feel like might be important if I haven't seen them already or want to, make sure things are going well with the band and stuff. We have a festival called Days Between, which I'll probably stay for the whole of those shows.
Hmm.
But I'm not going to be at every 2 a.m. show. I'm going to be okay with it. I'm going to be fine with it. And I'm still going to have a really beautiful, amazing time with the music and the festival. And I'm gonna take my kid. My older son is now this will be his third Jazz Fest, and he's only 2 years old. He went at 2 months, a year and 2 months, and now he'll go at like 2 years and 2 months. So this will
He'll
be his
he'll have that
yeah,
humble brag when he's like 18 and he's just like, "Oh yeah,
yeah.
I've been
They've got
doing
like
this for."
They've got like this beautiful kids area where I see like Big Sam with his kids, and they've got like silent discos for the kids, and my kid was loving that. Or you know I'll see Eric Krasno in there with his kid, and we're like, oh yeah, we're both on dad duty because the wives want to go check out a few other things. So we're in the kids tent. Like I remember rolling up to the kids tent and just hearing like a killer version of Aiko Aiko, and I see this huge band, and I'm walking up, and I'm like, this is killing. Who is this? And all of a sudden, you see the people get smaller and smaller and smaller, and you realize it's like a kids band that's like huge, like orchestra status, and they are crushing it.
Oh, that's
And I'm like,
awesome.
this is amazing. Like this, I'm gonna get a lot of joy from that. I also get a lot of joy from music. Like my little kid, my kid, he was 1 years old, but he was like really gravitating towards all of the world music at Jazz Fest. So we'd take him to he'd see the mariachi band and he'd get really excited. So we'd like stroll over there, and then we'd go to the Congo stage where there's some African music going on. He was absolutely loving it, and take him to the gospel tent. And then, you cruise in, you cruise out. You have these amazing experiences with music, but it's not always going to be the music in the scene that I grew up in, or I partied in. I'm finding new things that excite me or excite my kid. And to me, being able to experience that is its own special thing, you know? I mean,
Absolutely. I mean, I think one of the coolest things with music is as much as it can be expansive and explorative, it can equally be time capsule.
mhm,
It can take you back to a moment. It can transport you somewhere else. It can, we all have the seminal bands that we got into when we were younger. The first two CDs that I ever bought were Meteora by Linkin Park and Enter the 36 Chambers by the Wu-Tang Clan. Those were the first two CDs that I ever bought. But growing up, I have a deep love for Elvis because my dad had a love for Elvis. I have Queen and Zeppelin and other influences like that from my parents that I got that I then, wanted to rebel against. And I was like, no, I indefinitely connect with these nine guys from Staten Island that I totally lived the same lifestyle as, where, like, but it's very cool now. And I love how you're talking about world music, because something that I've been doing recently, as much as, I've been a jam band fan and all of that, and obviously you from a business perspective and just as a fan as well, I've kind of been forcing myself away, or maybe not forcing, but naturally it feels good to be inquisitive in other areas. So I've been delving heavily into, like the Ozzy Osbourne solo catalog. I've been listening to a lot of Aretha Franklin. I've been listening to, older bluegrass, not just the guys that are around today and the Doc Watsons and the Tony Rices, but really trying to dig in deeper and deeper to, Larry Sparks and other artists. And
Yeah, my kid was my wife was pregnant with our first kid, and I had to make the playlist. You know, the dad makes the playlist for the
sure.
delivery room to feel useful, you know. And so we made this playlist that ended up being the playlist we listened to him at home. And now it's like this like 4 day long playlist. And then I realized, oh, like I'm just listening to dad rock all the time now.
Right, right,
That is
right.
music that I'm gravitating towards. And it's like, 60s, 70s classics. And I'm like, this is great. Like this is what I'm into now, and I'm okay with that. I went to India recently and I did a meditation retreat there. And it was like 7 days in an ashram and 10 hours of meditation a day. It was like such a grounding but intense experience that coming out of that was like it's kind of jarring. And one of the girls who were, on this trip, she's a singer. She actually sings on tracks with like Sophie Tucker and other people, but she also does a lot of like Indian stuff and kirtan, like stuff like that.
Oh,
And
very
she
cool.
sent me like a playlist that was just like all nervous system regulating stuff. And I listen to that every day, every night in the sauna now. And I'm like, or if I'm on a long drive where I'd listen to like jam bands usually or something, now I listen to that because it's just like, I want to listen to music that'll help regulate my nervous system sometimes. That's just what I'm into. So music hasn't gone away. It's just, it
It
shifts,
ebbs and flows.
ebbs and
Yeah.
flows in different ways. And I
That's
don't think
that
it's an
that's
either or
beautiful.
situation.
Right, right, because it doesn't it's not a competition. It's not like I need to listen to this or I have to be connected to this or, because that's a form of attachment in a way.
And you said
Um,
you were listening to like Elvis and stuff for your parents, and like I'm actually finding myself listening to some, like Indian chanting and stuff like that as well. Something that I pushed away for a really long time. And so now I'm coming
mhm.
back to me because that brings back some other things. So it's the music's always going to be there. I think music is, they say, and I'm convinced that music comes from a mother's ability to wanting to, soothe a baby or a child, because the thing that will drop the resting heart rate of a baby more than anything else in the world is the mother singing. The mother can be singing out of tone, out of, in just what we would consider not great singing, but that does for the baby more than anything else that they've experimented with in the world. So I have to
Wow.
assume that that's the egg that kind of all music has come from. So like, and my daily night is I do with my kid. I'm like, okay, we take a bath, we read three books, and then we sing three songs, and then we go to sleep. And I remind him of this throughout the day so that he doesn't get surprised when we're going to sleep. And so like right now my catalog is like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. Like I that's still
That's
music.
real dad rock. That's
Yeah. Like that's still using music for something great, and it's his favorite part of the night. He loves singing it. We went to school. I went to pick him up from school the other day, and his teacher was like, "He's got the most amazing voice. He loves to sing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star," and he plays on this little harp that's in the class. So it's like music doesn't need to always be this beautifully polished thing. I think there was, for most of human society, it was a communal thing. Everybody participated in music.
hmm
We turned it
Ritualistic in a way, yeah.
Yeah, and we've turned it into a commodity where it should be more of a community-based thing. is what I always appreciated about certain churches. And we actually go to, my wife is Jewish, and we go to like a thing called Judaism Your Way, which is in the botanical gardens. It's exactly what you'd think a super Denver Jewish thing would be, where they've got like
Yeah.
the band is playing string cheese. It's just
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it's just a really, but like even that is music based. And I think there is something to music as a participatory sport, as opposed to this thing where you go and you sit and you stand and you take all the drugs and you just consume, you consume, you consume. Like there, when I was in India, this woman, she would play on the harmonium and sing a few verses, and it was like a call and response thing. And I haven't done that before, and I was like blown away by the impact of that experience. I think we need to bring that back in some ways to society, because I think we're missing that a lot.
I find that so intriguing for both from a point of a global perspective, because like I said, music is the universal language. There's this old quote or phrase that I'll never remember where I heard it. If I'm being honest, I think it was one of my oldest friends. His older brother had it on like a notebook or something, and it said, "Music is the art that feeds." And I love that because that's an open-ended thought. Music is the art that feeds the mind. It's the art that feeds the soul. Clearly, it's the art that feeds, it's a nurturing thing. And that's why we all have music that we put on when we're sad. We have music we put on when we're happy. In terms of from a meditation aspect, I did something similar a few years ago. It was a 21 day meditation. Are you familiar with Gurudev, Ravi Shankar?
Yeah.
So it was like a 21 day on YouTube. And I had tried meditation before, but I don't think I ever went into it openly the way that you should.
Was it
Um,
was it Ravi Shankar
yep.
or yeah, cool.
Yeah, and I just found his channel because I feel like for me guided meditation was the way that I could get into it, because there's a bit of the distraction with listening and paying attention and what have you. So I did that, and then I actually I grew up in New Jersey. I went to a 3 day up in the Catskills. I went to a 3 day retreat where I still, upon completion of the retreat, they gave us these small pendants. It has a lotus flower on one side and an Om symbol on the other. And it has not left my neck since. And I've consistently been enveloped more in my meditation practice. I go through different phases where I stopped doing the guided because I wanted to learn how to just be still within myself. Then I had time where I would particularly go outside to try to, allow the noises around me and embrace the sounds around me, but still find stillness. And something I've been doing recently, kind of with the musical context, is, the different hertz that you can listen to, 428 and all that. So I've been putting that on kind of over my sound system while I meditate in the mornings, because I'm very similar to you. I wake up at 5. I just got a puppy recently, so I get him outside. Then I come in, I do yoga, I do breath work, I pray, I meditate. I'm not religious, but I recently found prayer as a way to just openly converse with the universe, with myself, to vocalize. Um, and now including these tones and sounds within my meditation, over the past couple of days, I've felt a deeper connection. I felt a deeper ability to find stillness quicker, but
Mhm.
also forget about trying to find the stillness and just kind of letting it happen to me because it's coming from me. And a beautiful thing within that is that I've never felt closer to myself in meditation than I do currently.
Amazing.
And I always find it intriguing because, the point of meditation is different to everybody. It's meant to go inward, but it's also meant to go outward, all of that kind of I'm not super versed, I'm not a teacher, but I'm fascinated by it, and I've read so many books about, Buddhist meditation and Taoist meditation and different styles, Chinese meditation. There's a great book, The Secret of the Golden Flower, that
Mhm.
Ben Carey from Pigeons got recommended by Rick from Goose, that then got recommended to me. That was a great read. Um, and now I'm starting to find that the prayer and meditation, it's not these separate constructs. It's all connected. It's all a path inward. And something that I read that you do, which I actually did for the first time this morning, this practice that you have about 5 things every day that you're grateful for, but you don't allow yourself to repeat, which I did the first one today, easy.
Yeah.
I'm sure a month from now, I'm going to be like, I am grateful that the carpet is not as dirty as it was yesterday. Like I'm sure
Exactly.
it'll be
Exactly.
it'll be a stretch. But I think it comes back to that thing we said earlier about, physical health is mental health. Spiritual health is mental health. It's just health. It's
It's
being
just how.
it's being within yourself. And
We take these things and we make them separate, and we talk about this mind body connection as if they're separate entities, but it's really just this one thing.
it's
There's
you.
been so many studies on people, a lot of these longevity guys, right? Will be like, they'll do a million studies and they look for all of these discerning factors as to why certain people live a long time. And it's all come down to, almost all of them, the number one factor is people's emotional states and their emotional relationships seems to be the thing that propels the longest life in people. Um, so health, physical health and mental health are totally connected for sure.
I mean, it's I think once you finally make that connection, it's impossible to like discern it in any other way.
But I love that you're doing the gratitude practice. It's just 5 things every day you can't repeat. Like I have one from yesterday where it was like, I was grateful for the teacher talking about how great Bodhi's language was going, and I'm grateful for the other teacher for talking about his voice, and my wife made me testimonial graphics for my meditation teaching course, and I wrote that down. I gotta find like the most simple, smallest things throughout the day because I've you quickly run out of family, friends, job. Um, when you're doing it that way. But what you're doing is you're training your brain because it's not about being grateful for those little things. It's about the search. It's like, how do I
Hmm.
train my brain to look for the things that to be grateful for in life, as opposed to looking for the things like, oh, well, there's a spot over there. This is messy. Oh, it's kind of cold outside, but it's like a 72-degree day. It's like just looking for things that are wrong. And most of us do that 85% of the time. We're just pointing out things in our brains as to what's wrong. But this gratitude practice helped me train my brain to start looking at, everything a little bit more glass half full because I'm learning how to search for what's right, which I realized was a way weaker muscle than figuring out what was wrong. I got really good at that. Like that muscle got really strong really fast. I felt like, when I started doing this practice, I quickly realized how weak the muscle was. That was the gratitude muscle. And it really does feel like a muscle to me. It's like you need to be able to exercise that muscle as often as possible because if that's which is why I do it daily. If
Hmm.
I miss it on the weekends because I write it in my to-do book, I do it while going to sleep. I usually try to make sure I get to 5 before I fall asleep, but it's also such a beautiful way to fall into sleep
Yeah,
is
that sounds
for
phenomenal.
gratitude.
Because it
Um,
also brings you full circle to the day. It's
yeah,
you were present all day, internalizing the things that you were encountering, the feelings that you had, and bringing it to a close at the end of the day with, they always say, never go to bed angry, with your spouse, with whatever, like, don't go to bed angry.
Mhm.
I feel like we tend to do that, not necessarily go to bed angry. We just don't give ourselves the space to let that stuff go. And that's
Go
something
to bed because we're like, when we go to bed, we usually like, oh, okay, I just want this day to be over.
right,
Like
right,
go to sleep
right.
like that instead of being like, oh, these were all the wonderful things that happened today, and I'm so excited to have another full day of that tomorrow. And it's just a different mindset. It's changing your brain and changing the wiring of your brain because so often we're just pointing out things that are wrong, which is why I find the practice to be super helpful if I do it consistently on a daily basis.
Absolutely. It's with anything, it's consistency, it's action, it's a practice. Meditation is a practice. Working out is a practice. They are all things that in the same scheme with working on your mental health, it never goes away. It's a continuous effort. It's a continuous trying, not even necessarily to get better, because you can always get better. You can always improve, you can always grow. But if anything, it's trying to continuously maintain and find solace and find peace.
Mental health is not a destination, it's a journey. The journey is the destination, and it's
Beautifully said.
two types of people in this world are people who are like, this is how I am, and just this is what I do, this is how I am. And there's other types of people who are like, okay, what can I improve on today? What can I
Hmm.
tweak today? And for me, the meditation allows me to become more aware of where I can fine tune every day. I mean, my daily regimen is so like great and helpful for me. And if some people who would look from outside in would be like, oh, well, he's got it figured out. And for me, I'm like, still every day, I'm like, okay, can I adjust here? Where can I adjust here? What can I do differently here? Can I do a little bit more of this? And I'm okay with the fact that I'm not gonna get to some endpoint where I'm suddenly feeling everything is perfect, everything is good, but I'm starting to really just find the joy and enjoyment of life coming from the place of trying new things, trying to evolve, trying to work on becoming a better person. And that to me is the goal, the destination, that wanting to try harder and change aspects of myself and my personality and my physical health and improving a little bit here and improving a little bit there and maybe work on my performance one day, work on my muscle mass another day, work on my meditation another day and you know figuring out. And when you're working on like physical health, mental health, even though they're all the same thing, or
Sure.
meditation or spiritual stuff, or exercise, like you can't go 100% on all of those things at the same time. So, I get really into exercise and dialing that in, and then listening to podcasts about longevity and health, and I'm like, wait, I feel like there's something missing on the spiritual side. Okay, let me tweak and spend more time listening to things that'll help me in my spiritual side and my spiritual growth. Okay, I feel like I'm still having trouble with like emotional regulation. I'm arguing with my spouse. I'm feeling dysregulated with my kid. Like, okay, let me listen to some parenting stuff. And like, just how do I keep improving and tweaking and working on this being that I am consistently, daily to become better?
I always liken it to the fact that, and I think in the past I looked at it as like, oh, this is a bad thing. Life is a continuous fitted sheet that you're always pulling to make
Mhm.
try to fit,
Yep.
because it's never going to. It's never going to be perfect. It
Yeah.
just isn't.
Mhm.
And I spoke a little earlier about this isolation that I kind of went into between October up until February of this year. And it was the first time I shut my phone off for days at a time. I wasn't really going out. I wasn't really doing anything. For the first time in my life, through projects like this, I've also, hosted some mental health workshops at, Pigeons Festival Dome Fest, and mental health is it's a point of passion for me. And we all have, at some point in our life, we have that stigma around therapy and like, oh, well, I'm too smart. Like, what are they going to tell me? And I absolutely had that for the longest time. And people have gravitated to me in my life as a surrogate therapist. They tell me what's going on in their life, they want advice. And I had to eventually come to learn that like you can talk all you want, but are you listening?
Mhm.
Eventually it got to a point for me that it was okay, I'm listening, but it's so that I can retort. And that was a very powerful thing to learn because it changes your interactions with people when you're truthfully listening to hear versus when you're listening to respond are two totally different things. And amidst that isolation, I finally began seeing a therapist, which has been one of the most fruitful things that I've done for myself. And have been digging into numerous aversions, my insatiable need to progress because I wasn't able to be still within myself, in incessant need to just tack things onto myself because I couldn't be still, among numerous other things that, I'm sure we can talk about another time. But I recently, on about a week and a half ago, I had a Reiki healing treatment for the first time. And as I've gotten closer and more, or attempted to get more in tune with my spiritual self, I've tried to open that door more and more, being accepting and being willing, with meditation. I haven't explored, chanting and things like that yet, but it's just ever present. And like you said, meditation helps you like know what you need to do. It helps you survey, it helps you focus on the things that you do need to adjust. That is something that I've recognized as of late. I've been very disconnected spiritually from myself. I've been in that isolation. I was just sequestered with these preconceived notions of what things need to be and how they need to be, and that end goal and this dream that I need to live, and these and all these, absolutes that you have no control over.
Well, when the only thing that you are thinking about, if your brain is thinking thoughts all the time and you're identifying with those thoughts, eventually the only thing that's left to think about is thoughts themselves. It just doesn't it's not helpful to just ruminate all the time on, and therapy is great. I see a therapist once a week.
Hmm.
It's a very important part of my life. But what I get from meditation is the ability to put some distance between myself and my thoughts and not identify with them and being like, oh, look, your mind is going to think thoughts the way your heart pumps blood. It's just going to be constant. And it's allowing that to happen, noticing them, and not being like, oh man, I'm thinking this thing, I'm feeling this thing, I need to work on this thing. We're like, oh, my brain's doing that thing where it thinks that it needs to do this thing. Or my brain's doing that thing where it's thinking about this again, or this slight, or this wrong. I don't think I'm the one listening to these thoughts. I'm not the thoughts themselves.
Right.
And it putting some distance between yourself and all of that ruminating, I think, is what meditation really does for me. Um, and for me, it feels like an action point of being able to sit with myself and not feel like I need to solve or fix something right away, and just being okay with being me here now.
Right. I mean, Ram Dass, be here now. It's something that's so simple in saying, but it's so beautifully complex and challenging in action. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
you'd think being present, the idea is so simple. It's like, no, you're just present. You're just here. That's it. But there's so much within that. And I think that is a journey in and of itself. It's so funny. I feel like we tend to go so far out to just come right back
Mhm.
and be right here.
Mhm.
Um, and to me, it really sounds like I love when I meet people, not just, like-minded people, like the quote said, but people that have had shared experience. Obviously, we come from different walks of life, but we went through health overhauls. We're now, in a point in our lives where spirituality has come in, meditation practice. And I love being able to share that because what it makes me realize is it's something that I've said, but up until recently didn't really even understand is that the path to everything else truly is the path to yourself.
Mhm.
Because there's no way to get to anything else without getting to you first. Because life's not happening to you, it's happening from you.
Yeah, I like that.
And what I'm intrigued by to ask you now, all these years, that guy that quote was from versus the guy now. I mean, we recognize each iteration of ourselves, the sober curious guy, the guy that was on tour, the guy that was starting a blog, turning it into a multimedia business, all of these things. I truthfully, based off of just what I've seen and read about you, you're a pioneer in what you do, and you have taken a passion and turned it into something credible and something successful, but also something that means something to you. We talked about your kid and the global, your transition of how now you're into dad rock and all of these things. Where exactly, and it doesn't need to be on like a priority scale, but what exactly does music mean to you now in terms of, we talked about what it is from a connection point. Obviously, it's your business. You can use it with your children and all of that kind of stuff. But for you independently, do you still look at music purely with intention and just passion the way that you used to? Or do you even more so than you did all those years ago?
Yeah, I mean, I think that doesn't go away. I think I understand where the love for it comes from and how to integrate it into my daily life and appreciate it from a place of appreciation and love and noticing and kind of smiling at how it affects my life and how it's affected me through community and business and life and family. It's helped me create my family. And I still love going to shows and seeing all of that. But I don't feel like I'm like we said before, I don't feel like I need to consume it with a funnel down my throat all the time or into my ears, you know? It doesn't feel like it's, oh my God, if I don't hear this, if I don't see this live, I'm gonna die, you know? And I
Right,
know
right.
I live for live music and I still live for it, but it's not live for live music or, it's not like it's not the FOMO isn't really there anymore because I've started to notice music in all parts of my life, whether I'm listening to it at home, whether I'm singing for my kid, whether I'm going out with friends and taking in the music. It's not like it's just it seems to be a beautiful gold thread that's just, permeates throughout every aspect of my life. And it's just this point where you can notice and touch and see and you see how it's impacted who you are today and be appreciative of that.
I think that's a beautiful relationship to have found within it. And part of, we didn't even touch on Live for Live at all, which I'm actually really happy about in only the sense that I don't want that to I don't ever want there to be a focus on a particular matter when I have these kind of conversations. We're having a human experience.
Mhm.
And I think the beauty in organic conversation is seeing where it goes. However, I do for people that are intrigued about music and things of that, the name of the show, Musically Mindful, the reason it's spelled with two L's is because I also want people to leave with their minds full of, I learned numerous things already, the fact that there's studies about how a mother singing is like that's a beautiful factoid that I never knew. So I get to lead these conversations with the same thing. But what I want, and maybe you can impart from the health side, from the spiritual side, as somebody who has made music part of their career, or it has made it their career, it doesn't need to be you playing, but music is your business, it's your livelihood. What ways does the music industry impact you and your mental health? And what are things or tools or routines other than, the ones we've already discussed, even if it be conversation with your wife or your peers or whatever have you, what kind of impact does the music industry have on you?
So I feel like the music industry is just this giant conglomerate of all of these small businesses that operate as startups in their own little ways. Even like Live Nation is like this big corporate entity, but like each venue almost operates as its own little startup under their umbrella. And I feel like that culture, and because of that, that it's a conglomerate, and not this like giant industry where people have like set rules and regulations and you know vacation days and things like that. I think people have we you take all of these small businesses and you put them up against each other or have them work with each other, and it sometimes it leads to a lot of people who are very distressed, feeding off each other's stressed out states, and it can get very angry and combative. And I think a lot of times people feel like in this industry everything's an emergency, more so than I've seen in like an ER. I think people are
Right,
like
right, right,
it,
right.
and they tie so much of their identity to their jobs, and because of that I think they tie their self-worth to their jobs, and they tie their self-worth into what they do. We're human beings, we're not human doings, and everyone identifies themselves with all the different things that they do.
That's a marketing campaign, just FYI.
and
That's all.
they're just not they're not as in tune with like the beingness of being a human, and they don't identify with that. They feel like they need to identify with everything external that's going on in their life, which happens to be their career, their job. And for musicians, especially, they t when they're creating their own art and they're trying to commodify it, they get so wrapped up on in success, in what their peers think, and all of these different fluctuations. And I've seen artists who would have been happy at at a certain age to be where they are now, but now all they can see are people who are even more successful or doing even better. Or, oh, well, why didn't my song get a million hits on Spotify? It only got 100,000. And I feel like they tie their self-worth to those things, and that causes a lot of distress in the music industry, a lot of unworthiness, a lot of feelings of I'm not good enough. But what they are not realizing is because they're so externally referenced, because they're tying their worth to this thing that they do, that they originally were doing out of love and creativity, but now it's like tied to what they're what they're worth. It just has a detrimental impact on their mental health, and they're never going to feel like it's enough, because when you're relying on these external things, they're never going to give you the feelings of worthiness. They might for a second, and then boom, it's gone. You're off to the next thing. You're in the bigger pond, you're in the bigger pool, you're in the lake, you're in the ocean. Like you're never going to get to a point where you're satisfied with where you are if you're just tying your worth to your career or how many views you get on something. And I've seen that happen over and over, and it used to happen to me all the time. And I just think back to when I started this company, I would be so happy knowing that this is where I am today. And all these heroes of mine are now friends, and I created a business out of this, and I'm putting on shows and concerts. But when you're in it, you're like, oh man, like why isn't this show selling as good as this one? Or why am I only throwing boutique festivals and not major music festivals? And just there's always something that you feel like could be done better or more because there's always going to be people around you that are doing things that are bigger or that look like they're or feel like that are bigger or that they're getting something more out of than what you're getting out of what you're doing. And the funny thing is, those people are feeling the same way looking at their peers. And so it's just become as this toxic cycle of people just not feeling worthy enough um, for the current roles that they're in. And that's why I think it's so cool that there's nonprofits like Backline that was started, for-profit companies like Amber Health, which goes out with touring artists, that artists are now hiring. But I took my 3-day meditation course with Backline, and now full circle is I'm teaching the same course that I was taught, and I've had two courses so far. I've got another one in a month or so.
If
I've
I'm
got,
able to sign up for it, I'd love to.
yeah, I've got like a few slots left.
Yeah,
Uh,
count me. We'll do it after, but count me in.
Awesome. Yeah. So that I'm really looking forward to. Then I host a bi-weekly, so every 2 weeks I do a group meditation. Yesterday I did one for only for my former students. And I
Hmm.
did one with two of my former students yesterday, and we talked about, unworthiness and forgiveness and all of these amazing concepts. And for me, we talked about how like your actions in life are reflective of whatever consciousness state that you're in. And I think a lot of people focus on repentance and forgiveness and all of
Hmm.
that. And instead, we talked about instead of doing all of those things, put more energy into raising your consciousness level instead. And that's going to bring about the change that you're looking for. So yeah, they're amazing resources like Backline and meditation and just going out and go to the gym, like go run, go outside and run. Like do whatever you can for your physical health, your mental health. Get sleep. I know some nights are going to be late, but like your work nights don't have to be your everyday life as well. Like there are some nights where I'm gonna be up till 1, 2 in the morning, and that to me, even saying that out loud, I just got a little, whoa,
Yeah.
that sounds very late, but it's gonna happen. But if the rest of my week looks like a 9 p.m., 9:30 sleep with 8 hours of sleep, waking up in the morning and going to work out, then that I feel like is the balance that I need to be happy and feel whole and feel healthy and feel safe in my body, safe in my mind, safe in who I am. So,
Again, it's the consistency. You can always step outside of your routine. You can always indulge when it makes sense. But if you're a creature of routine and habit and you are prioritizing your wellness and you're taking it seriously, I'm into all of the same. I have red light glasses for when it's nighttime. I'm into biohacking, sauna, cold plunge. Last year I
You
took
got the
on,
sunlight in the morning.
yep,
You got the lamp.
yep.
That's my new thing. I got
It's
one of those.
great.
Yeah, and I stand in front of it's a for people listening, it's a like 10,000 LUX
Yep.
lamp that I turn on at 5:30 in the morning because there's no sun outside. Me and my wife would over the summer we were going and we were doing 5 minutes of morning sunlight with my kids drop off schedule, my workout schedule, and the fact that it's literally pitch black out for most of the winter, I wasn't able to get that morning sun. And now
Hmm.
I have it in my bedroom and I get the more basically the might of the morning sun
It's
in my
beautiful. It's
eyes. Yeah, it's a good
and
thing.
like biohacking stuff is so fruitful and it's so amazing. Um, and I feel like, it's trendy and it's all these things, but I feel like when you go into it with the intention of longevity, like you talked about, and really trying to better your physical self and better because you're bettering your health as a whole, whether it
Mhm.
be the way that you diet, your exercise, your sleep, your habits. I think reading is a huge thing for cognition, and I think it's important that you take time to read, even if it's a couple pages a day at night. Make that time because there are beautiful. You find things in books consistently. I'm rereading at the moment The Alchemist, and there's a beautiful section of the book where they talk about this kid, king has him carry a spoon that's full of oil, and he has him walk through the palace, and he has him walk, but he tells him not to spill any of the oil. So he takes a walk and he doesn't spill a drop of the oil, and he comes back, and the king says, did you see all my tapestries hung up? Did you see the robes? Did you see the beautiful artwork? And he's like, no, I didn't notice any of it. And he's like, okay, go and walk again. So he walks again, and now he sees all of the artwork and the tapestries and the beautiful things around. And he comes back to the king and he says, what happened to the oil in the spoon? And now all the oil in the spoon fell out because he was focused on the other things. And it's a beautiful lesson of life being perception and awareness of the beauty around you with intention and focus on the task at hand as well. And I thought it was, I'm obviously semi paraphrasing, but it was a really beautiful part of that book, that's in the first or second chapter that I really, it was such a deeper, it hit me so much deeper the second time than the first time. And I thought it
Yeah,
was,
like people ruminate about all these things, and when you're meditating, you realize, like, oh my God, there's a lot of fucking noise going on. Is that happening all the time? And we don't
yeah,
realize
yeah,
that
yeah.
that is what's happening all the time. And so we're fixated on all these things. We're missing life. We're missing everything that's happening around us.
Yeah, Eckhart Tolle, the author of The Power of Now, has a beautiful
Love that
statement,
book.
has a great statement in that book where it's you cannot increase your life or it's important to have goals and all of these things that you want to achieve, but not at the sacrifice of simply being and living life itself.
Mhm.
And it's the truth. And going touching on what you said about the music industry, we talked about how it's now become monetized and it's commoditized, and it's so metrically driven. It's quantitative. It's how well did you achieve? How well are your tickets selling? How many nights of the year are you on the road? How all these kinds of things where I feel like there's so few people that I talk to that look at it from a qualitative perspective that are like, I went out and played a show tonight and somebody in the crowd was crying. Or I wrote this song when I was at a deeply personal time in my life and I went out tonight and 2,000 people sang every word. I think things like that are one of the most beautiful parts of the music industry. And I think that from a mental health perspective in particular, those are the connection points. Those are the things that matter. I remember I spoke to Jake Brownstein from Eggy, and that was something we touched on. He was like, I can't express how me creating something and me making something that was for me has now transitioned and trickled out to mean something to other people.
Yeah, and that's the key is making things for you and not
Hmm.
making it for some long-term result. I
Right.
think Rick Rubin talks about that a lot too. It's like
Creator versus consumer. Yeah.
exactly, and just
The
like
Creative Act is a great book that I read last year.
yeah, and just like you create for yourself, and you allow the world to consume it how they might. But the beauty is in the creation. It's not
Hmm.
in how it's consumed. And
Yep.
I think, and I work in the industry, like I'm guilty of a lot of this, commodification myself, and I've just been noticing a lot more of it now and starting to see, oh, like music doesn't have to be this thing that I stand at a you know in a venue for. Like, it could be something that I enjoy at home. It could be singing to my son. It could be, oh, there music's all around me. It doesn't have to be this thing that costs a certain amount of money to see in a certain amount of production value. Oh, is the sound completely clear? Oh, like, or I have friends that I go to concerts with, and I'll be like, oh, the bass is too low here. When I was just like, shut the fuck up, just enjoy the music.
Yeah.
And but it's, I feel like being in the industry, you just, oh, like, like a question that I ask my friends who are managers or artists sometimes, and I'm like, oh, they'll be like, oh, did you go to that show? Or I'll see them at a show, and I'm like, oh yeah, how did it sell? Like, it's just like a thing that rolls off, like as if how it's sold matters in any grand scheme of anything besides for how much money is going to go into a certain person's bank account. But that's something that I ask so frequently, and it's almost driven out of habit, where I'm like, want to know how something sold. Sometimes it's because, thinking about booking that same act, and does it make sense for
Sure.
whatever. But I find myself, that muscle, I flex that muscle again when I'm like at a friend's show, and I'm like, oh, nice, you had a great show the other night. How did it sell? And it's like, what? Why does that matter? Why?
Right.
Why?
It's habitual for you at this point. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just, I think, I think it's really cool when people are in tune with their why of why they're playing music, while they're making music, and enjoying it, and being accepting of whatever experience it is that they're having. And I think that's the key to life, is being accepting of whatever experience it is that you're having. And this is not a music industry exclusive problem. This is, you have billionaires who are the most unhappy people I know are some of the wealthiest, and to them, they just don't have enough.
Hmm.
And they're always living in a place of lack. And they feel like, oh my God, my bank account's, the stock market's down. What am I going to do? And they're fine financially to anybody else that you speak to, but they've attached their worthiness to this thing, to their job, to their finances, to how big their 401k is. Oh, I'm worth this much if it's worth this much. But the problem with that is, after a while, your mind makes a certain dollar amount a baseline, and then it wants more. And so you're not worthy up until this point. You're only worthy at this point. Then when you get to that point, okay, you're not worthy at this point. You're only worthy at that point.
And
And
then
so
it just never stops. It's a
and it
vicious cycle.
never stops. So, and that happens in the music industry as well. I see so many artists who are super successful just be super depressed all the time because they're not as successful as the person to the left or right. I see it in the music industry all the time. I see it within myself all the time.
Me too.
I live a amazing life, and I have a great business, and I have a great um it's a great business. But there's so many times where I find myself, especially in prior years, looking to the left or right at competitors, at other promoters, at other friends. And we have so many facets of our business. So there's just so many other people to look at all the time. And that always caused me to feel inadequate with what I was doing.
Hmm.
Where I know there's probably so many people who see what I'm doing, and they're like, oh my God, this is this big, amazing, massive thing. Like this guy is so lucky. I'm not doing enough. And like it just goes on and on and on.
Right. Then I'm not doing enough, so I'm not enough. And then it's a consistent, and to even humanize it outside of the musical aspect, I see that in my personal life. I, to a fault, consistently, have up until literally even recently, live in the sense of what I don't have.
Yeah.
And it happens in a context of, in a romantic context, in other avenues of my life. We pin ourselves to this tunnel vision of, it needs to be this, it has to be that, I need this, I need that, that we're not even paying attention to the other thing. I am such a subject, I am so a victim of my own action of it, that I spill the oil consistently
Mhm.
because I'm looking at all the stuff around me. Or I'm so focused on the oil that I don't pay attention to anything that's going on.
Exactly.
And I
That's where the
think,
gratitude practice really helps. It helps you take stock of what you have and trains your brain to start looking for what it has as opposed to what it's lacking.
yeah, that I'm incredibly happy that I read about that practice that you do and that I started it today, because I can feel how weak of a muscle that is.
Mhm.
And something I've been doing as of late, particularly since that Reiki healing, because it really did snap a lot of things into perspective for me, just because of the feelings that I had afterwards. Like, I've been so, through that isolation, I really thought that I was doing so much internal work and I was digging heels in. And mind you, I was, therapy had really brought a lot of things to light. But what it really was forcing me, or not forcing me to do, what I was forcing myself to do, was just be inactive with it. I was surveying it and recognizing it and understanding it. But equally, I was running away from people. I was running away from the world, and in my own way, by clouding it as like, no, I don't need that because I'm doing this. This is what's going to serve me best. And when I finished that Reiki healing, I had a reading as well that really just kind of spoke to me in a way about stopping running away from things that I'm good at, stopping investing in practices that I enjoy, doing things that serve me well because I think that I should do something else. And a beautiful thing that this woman told me as well was, I had lost a sense of my playfulness with life. And I really had to take a step back, and I looked through my journal over the past couple of months, and everything had such a serious tone, and
Mhm.
everything was so heavily predicated on the destination, not the journey. Because the journey is playful. The journey is fun. It's beautiful. It's brutal. It's tangible. It's all these, different adjectives and buzzwords that I could come up with. But the beauty, truthfully, is the journey, whether it be music or business or health or whatever the case is. I really think that the world is starting to make a bit of a shift into what it never should have veered away from, which is being present, enjoying what you have in front of you, enjoying who is around you, prioritizing cultivating that, and making your life as good as it can be while taking everything in stride. And I think that my recent meditation practice and this Reiki healing that I had, and my willingness to connect with my spiritual self more, is the corner that I've needed to pull on the sheet a little bit. And I think that there's a really beautiful semblance within music, that music has a purity to it, as much as it's been commoditized and monetized and it's a business, and there's all these stresses and people are away from their families and life on the road and all these struggles and all these things. It's the pureness of creation, it's the pureness of shared experience and commonality within exactly what you said. It's being human. Music, I think, is a beautiful connection point where we can all just be human a little bit better collectively.
Well said.
Um, I mean, with that, this has been enlightening. It's been eye-opening in numerous ways. I had a feeling that we would have a lot of shared experience and that we would really, connect on a lot of similar things. But I also want to just thank you for being forthcoming about your experience and, sharing your views on numerous things. And what I want to do now is I want to just give you complete open floor to anybody that you would want to say it to, your peers, your family, your friends, people you've never met. If there's one thing that Kunj could just say to the world, what would it be?
I would say that the most important thing in life is how you are within yourself. And if you make that a pleasant place, like I truly believe, I truly believe that the problems of the world start at home, and the problems at home start within. So if you make it a pleasant place to live within, you're going to have just naturally, it's your external circumstances are going to get better. They're going to feel better. The world around you is so predicated on how you are inside. I think it's really important that people take that energy or any energy that they have and put it into making that a better place for them to live in.
I think that's a beautiful construct. I think that's a beautiful piece of advice. And truthfully, something that I have and am going to continue to try and embody myself. So sincerely, I'm among the five things I already said this morning. I'm incredibly grateful for your time today. I'm grateful for the conversation. And sincerely, I would love to sign up for your upcoming class because I want to not only further my own meditation practice and honestly just yeah, I feel like, keeping a line of connection and having these kind of conversations is important. The whole reason I started this project last year that I took some time away from that I'm now back to doing is I do truthfully believe that driving this kind of conversation into the forefront is important. And I do believe that particularly within it may be your business, it may be my pleasure, whatever the case is, within this scene and within this space and others, it is not something that is put in the forefront and given the spotlight that it truthfully should. I love that there are organizations like Backline, and I've recently reached out to Hillary to try to have some conversation to see if there's not ways that we can align together. Because I truthfully believe in what they do, and I think that the mission statement of this show aligns with that. So I love that you've done so much work with them. Um, and truthfully, I just sincerely appreciate your time and your perspective, not only on the music industry, but just your perception of your own journey. And I credit you to the level of growth that you've achieved in your own life.
You as well, man. It sounds like you've I want to hear your story one day.
Yeah, dude, I would love to. We can always, yeah, we'll exchange info deeper and everything like that. And we're both pretty local, so
Yeah, that'd
getting
be
get
great.
yeah, getting together sometime would be awesome. So with that, I don't think there's anything else that could be said for this interview or the conversation. I hate calling it an interview; it's so stupid. But I always say to the people watching. I always just want them to know that wherever you are is exactly where you should be. And I hope that you take something away from this episode. And I hope that wherever you are on your journey, you're comfortable and you appreciate wherever it is that you're headed. So I hope your mind is full and I hope you leave with intention to take care of yourself. And I hope that you stay well until next time. So everybody take care. Thanks for listening. Kunj, thank you again for your time. And guys, we'll see you next week.